दुबे सर आप कर सकते हैं, अनम्यूट कर सकते हैं.
Clemis can also unmute herself and we'll begin now. Good morning, everyone. It's indeed a pleasure to see such a large number of people gathering for this assembly every morning on Sundays. I want to extend a very warm welcome to Mrs. Clemis Petter, who has kindly agreed to give a talk before this gathering. Most of us know Clemis because she has spoken before this group and she is a regular attendee in all our talks. But she wants a very brief introduction, so I'll basically mention that Clemis is a member of the Theosophical Society, living in its international headquarters at Chennai since 2014. She is from Brazil. She is deeply interested in Krishnamurti's teachings, and today she will share some of her views with us. The theme of her talk is a change in direction. After Clemis, through her talks, I will request Dr. Gajanan Rao and Dr. Arshad Parekh to make some brief observations, and then we can start taking questions. With these words, I welcome Clemis once again and request her to please begin your talk. Thank you, Clemis.
Good morning to everybody, and thank you, Mr. Dubeji, for inviting me for this gathering. And I would like to say that, in fact, I'm not going to give a talk. It's not, I don't consider it as a talk. I think it is more like a sharing. I just would like to share some observations that I have made during my studies of Krishnamurti's teachings and all of this. So today the theme is a change in direction. There is a question that Krishnamurti made when he was exploring with David Bohm, and he, at least that is the first place where I saw him asking this question. And he asks, has humanity taken a wrong direction? When I first heard this question, I was shocked because somehow we take for granted that there is no such thing, that everything is the way it should be, and we are moving ahead and into the right direction. So when he asked this question, has humanity taken a wrong direction? It really shocked me, and I became deeply interested in trying to understand what he meant by that. So when we look at the question, and if we look at the society and the way human beings have walked and where we are right now, it seems that is quite a valid question. Because the way things are going, we are approaching a very difficult time. We are already in a difficult time, and we are now having all these situations and problems with technology that we don't really know what's going on, what they are doing, and if we know where we are heading with this. There is artificial intelligence that human beings don't really know what that means and what it is capable of and how it is being used, but it is there. It is part of our reality already. So if we look at that, the next question is, are we, and he also said something before the next question, he also said something. He said something like, if somebody like me comes and says, you have been walking north, can we change direction? So you have been walking north and this is leading nowhere. So are you willing to change direction? So the question is, are we willing to change direction? Each one of us here has been reading Krishnamurti at least at some extent. And I don't think anybody in this meeting is completely alien to his teachings. So he insisted that something different has to happen. And are we willing to take this step to change the direction? So I would say that to change direction, the first thing we need to know what is the direction that we are going to. And we don't seem to know even that. We take for granted, like I said in the beginning, that everything is fine the way it is. And at some point, something will straighten things out. So, but that may not happen. We don't know. That's just a hope. So, and this is because we don't know where we are going. Because basically we don't know where we are. In the sense, we don't know the direction we are going to. So to change direction, the first thing is to realize what is the direction that we have taken. So it seems to me that the clear thing is that at some point, which I don't know where or when, humanity decided to develop the mind to an extent that has become too much. We have focused in developing the mind, and with this, we have neglected the heart. Which means many people may say, no, but there are good things like we do have kindness, goodness, we do have, but it has not been enough to make a difference. So, what happened?
We can hear you, Clemis.
Okay, no, because something happened here in my screen. So the question is, are we willing to look into it? Are we serious enough to look into it? Because to realize that we have been going into the wrong direction is quite a difficult thing to admit, because then it may mean that we have to change completely. And completely means really completely. And that is really a drastic step. So if we look at the way we have been doing things, let's say in this spiritual path, what many people call spiritual path, for thousands of years we have been having teachers. It is not because we never had a teacher before, we did. We had many. And they were all good. There was nothing wrong with them. And their teachings are also good. So what is the problem? Why have we not changed? Why are we going in the same direction? Which means we still insist that developing the mind is the more important thing. And as a result of developing the mind, we have become competitive. And we have neglected cooperation. Because when one is competitive, he cannot cooperate. So, and in competition, there is always, one has to win for the other to lose. So I have to, for me to be feeling good, somebody has to be feeling bad. So there is this sense of always looking for my well-being despite of whatever is going on around me, has made us blind and has made us insensitive. So my feeling is that the wrong direction started when we decided that to develop the mind is all we need. And now we have developed it at an extent that it is driving us to the precipice. So I think I selected a small passage of a dialogue that Krishnamurti had with the Buddhist scholars in Brockwood in 1978. Those dialogues are really good. And I selected 3 portions of the second dialogue because I feel that is a clue for this that we are trying to talk today. So I am going to share this video, and then after that we continue.
So how is it possible for thought to end? Some people say yes, which is to meditate, control,
No.
suppress.
No.
Wait, I said some people. I said, madam.
Beg pardon.
Some people have said, suppress it. Identify the self with the highest, which is still the movement of thought. Some people have said, burn out all the senses. Right, sir? They have done it. Fast, do everything for this thing. So somebody comes along like me and says, effort is the very essence of the self. Right? Do we understand that? Or has it become an idea and we carry that idea out? You understand what I'm saying? I don't know if I'm making myself clear. That is,
if you say effort is the very essence of self,
what?
effort is the very essence of self, is there again preparation?
What?
A preparation.
Eh?
A preparation.
Ah.
A initial training
no.
to come to that situation. Or does one come to it effortlessly?
If I have understood you, and please correct me if not, you mean that the very effort that I make to come to it, that in itself is already contributing to my delusion?
To the maker of the effort.
Yes. Yes.
Who is going to who has already identified with something greater and is making effort to reach it. It's still the movement of thought.
And it's still a bargaining. If I do
And
this
so-
or give this up, then I will get that.
So, how do you, if I may ask, listen?
Beg pardon?
How do you listen?
Listen.
It is, a person like me says, effort of any kind only strengthens the self. Now, how do you receive that statement?
I'm entirely...
No, not agreement or disagreement. God. How do you listen to it?
Let it impinge.
What?
Let it impinge.
No.
Do we listen in the same way we have made identifications? That is, in general, we listen through the past, you see, through our previous ideas, through what we know.
It must be.
But is that right?
If one can open up
No,
and just listen.
No.
Can't one?
When you eat, you are eating because you are hungry. The stomach receives the food. There is no idea of receiving the food. So can you listen without the idea of receiving? Or accepting, or denying, or arguing. Just listen to a statement. It may be false, it may be true, but just listen to it. Can you do it? And so but can I attend so completely that there is only the act of listening and nothing else, no identification, no say, yes, that's a good idea, bad idea, that's true, that's false, which are all process of identification. But without any of that, any of those movements, can I listen? If so, if when I do so listen, then what? The truth that thought is the essence of the self, and the self creates all this misery, is finished. I don't have to meditate, I don't have to sit, go practice, all that. It's over. Because I see the danger of this thing. So can we listen so completely that there is the absence of the self? People would call that death. Say, my God, if I don't identify myself with my something or other, well, I am nothing. So they are afraid of being nothing. Then identify. But nothingness is, which is not a thing. Not a thing. Therefore, it's quite a different state of mind. Now, that is death. While there is living sensations, the heart beating, blood circulating, breathing, the brain active, undamaged. No, this is undamaged. Our brains are damaged.
Well, can this damage be healed?
Huh?
Is it possible to heal the damage?
Inside, that's what I want to get at. Our brains are damaged. For thousands of years, we have been hurt, psychologically, inwardly. And that hurt is part of our brain cells, remembered hurts. The propaganda for 2,000 years that I'm a Christian, that I believe in Jesus Christ, which is a hurt. Or I'm a Buddhist, I'm a follower, it's a hurt. So our brains are damaged. To heal the damage is to listen very carefully. To listen. And in the listening, to have an insight to what is being said. And therefore there is immediately a change in the brain cell. Therefore there is no identification, complete and total. And then, is that love?
Yeah. So that was what I wanted to share. And I feel in this second talk, discussion that he's having dialogue with the Buddhists, it is really an amazing video. And here he is saying something very interesting. There are these 3 extracts. He is saying that, first of all, we don't listen. And maybe that has been the problem, because we had many teachers before and we were unable to listen to them. And why was that? Maybe because we immediately identified with them and became Christians. And so we stopped listening to the teaching the moment we became Christians. And maybe we stopped listening to Buddha when we became Buddhists. Because the moment we identify with something, we cannot listen anymore. Because we lose the capacity of discernment, because we take sides. Suppose I'm a Christian and somebody starts talking, saying that Christianity is nonsense, blah, blah, blah. I feel hurt. So immediately I cannot listen anymore to what that person is saying. Maybe there is some truth in it, I don't know, but I cannot listen because I already took sides. Because I'm identified with that. And that has been the common thing that we have been doing all along the way. With every teacher, we did the same thing. So the question here is, Krishnamurti is being very clear. He does not leave room for misunderstanding or mistake. So the question is, can we listen to him? Are we listening to him? Or are we identifying with him? And then we cannot listen anymore. And we keep on repeating what he said. But what he said is truth for him. It is not truth for me because I haven't seen what he's talking about. So unless I see what he's saying, what he's talking about, unless I have an insight into it, it is not true for me. So he said many things. And if I keep on just repeating what he said, what good does that do? I am being different from anybody else, from people who are repeating whatever they say, Buddha said, whatever they say, Jesus said, or anybody else. So this is one thing. We have lost our capacity to listen because we have been identifying with so many things. And then there is the whole thing that we have to become better than what we are. But we don't even know what we are, and we already want to be better than that. So it is a huge conflict that goes on within us. And in Christianity, they say you have to be good. So we are what we are. And then when we see that we are not being good, immediately we want to brush that aside and look for this so-called goodness. That is no real goodness at all, because we don't know what that means. All we know is what we are. That's what is going on. If we see it or not, that's what's going on. We may try to hide our feelings, but they will come out in our actions, if we want it or not, if we like it or not. If we are jealous, we will act like it will come out in our action. If we are greedy, it will come out in our actions. It doesn't matter how much we try to hide it. So we have not been able to face. And this listening is not only listening to Krishnamurti, this listening is also listening to ourselves, listening to what is going on within us, listening to our feeling, to our thoughts, to our day-to-day life. Listening to that, listening to the people that are around us. When somebody starts talking to us and we don't like that person, immediately we stop, we cannot listen. We keep counting the minutes for that person to go away, stop talking, whatever. But we cannot listen. So we have been neglecting our life for a long time. And I feel that is one of the things that, and that only strengthens, because it strengthens this habit of not listening, the habit of running away from life, from things. Because the more you do it, the more capable of doing it you become. It starts to become very subtle. It acquires new ways of doing it. So the more you apply yourself doing it, the more it grows, the more it becomes difficult to see it. So that is one thing. The next thing that he says, can you listen without the idea of receiving? Which means, can you listen to the teachings or to anybody, anything, without the idea of getting something out of it? Can we sit and just listen without saying it is good, is bad, is right, is wrong, I like it, I don't like it, this is nonsense? This goes with whatever I already learned in Bhagavad Gita or in the Bible. So another thing is, we have this measurement, we compare. Some people say, oh, what Krishnamurti says is the same thing that the Buddha said. See, we have not listened to Buddha. We don't know what Buddha said. We think we know because we read some things in some books, and we think because we read it, we know. But we don't know. By reading, we don't see. It is just an intellectual knowledge. It is no deep knowledge. And now, with this intellectual knowledge, we compare it with what Krishnamurti said, and then we also we intellectualize what Krishnamurti said. So it means, first of all, if we had understood what Buddha said, we would not be even listening to Krishnamurti, because then we would be quite different people. So this habit of comparing is just showing that we have not gotten neither one, and we are not listening. We have lost this capacity, because we want to get something from them. We think they can give us something that we don't have. We think that they can give us enlightenment. But clearly they cannot. Because if that was possible, Buddha would have done it. He would have given it to so many people, and these people would have given it to other people. By now, we would all be enlightened. It doesn't work like that. So whatever we can, we have to learn to look through our own eyes. Whatever can happen if we can listen. And if we cannot listen, be aware that we are not listening. That we are not able to listen because we have too many wants, we are crowded with knowledge. And we cannot give up, because then we feel, if I say I don't know, I am nobody, how can I even talk with people and discuss things with people? So when he says this, can you listen without the idea of receiving? Like when the stomach receives food, stomach has no idea it is receiving whatever it is receiving. It is just receiving and working with it. So can we listen in the same way, like we listen to a bird, without wanting to make something with it, without wanting to get something out of it, with real humility? So the next thing that Krishnamurti says in this extract that I found quite extraordinary is when he says that our brains are damaged. And he says that this damage has been caused by 2000 years of propaganda. I'm a Christian, I believe in Jesus, I'm a Buddhist. So this here doesn't matter with what we identify. This identification damages the brain. So this is quite serious. If we could see the danger of this, and to understand what Krishnamurti is talking about, there can be no identification. So even to listen to him, if we are identified, we cannot. So another thing that Krishnamurti talked quite a lot was about the need for real care for each other, real friendship, learn to do things together. And here this learning to do things together, what does that mean? It is not that we do things together my way, then we are together, or your way, then we are together. No, we are together. There is no my way, there is no your way. We will sit and find a common way, which is not mine and you agree with it, or it is yours and I agree with it. But there has to be intelligence to discuss things and come to see things together, to have real affection. You know, the other day I saw a video where he was discussing with the staff in Brockwood, I think it was Brockwood. Anyhow, he was saying, he said something very interesting. He said, can we do something different? Something that has never happened before, which is to have real affection. Then he says, there has been many teachers, and the moment the teacher died, the disciples start to fight with each other. Can we do, this has never happened in human history, that people can do things together. But together is not just a word that is a nice word to say. It is a real deep thing. To do things together means it is not my way that we are going to do. Means we are going to sit together and have real affection. There is no competition. There is no enmity. Are we capable of doing this? Are we capable of working like this? Without a person telling us you have to do it. I saw once, some long time ago, there was a series of Buddha's life. I think it was in TV here in India, and then after that they put it in Netflix. I saw it in Netflix. And there, after when Buddha died, many people came for the cremation ceremony and all that. And after that, they started to fight over Buddha's ashes immediately. They were not even cold. The ashes were still hot and people were already fighting over Buddha's ashes. So this is what has happened. So can we listen to each other, not only to a teacher, but can we listen to each other without this feeling hurt because the person is saying something and I don't like it? Can we be honest? Can we be simple and talk things through and find out the human way of relating? So to me, this is the wrong direction that humanity has taken, because we have not been able to do anything together in a real human way. There is no real affection. You see, everything has become a commercializing. You know, everything has become like, we have developed such a commercial mentality that everything has become commercial. In our personal life, when we get married, it is like a business. What will I get? Is this a good person? Will it be a good companion for me? Will it be profit for me, or will it bring trouble for me? That is how we look the whole thing. There is no simplicity, there is no love, there is no affection. There may be, but those cases are very rare. I am talking of general, in general. And this is everywhere you look. East, west, everywhere, it is the same. Our children, we want them to be successful. We want them to make money, to have a big doctor in front of their name. If they are happy, nobody cares. We assume they will be happy because they have a big doctor in front of their name. It is not so. We have seen people who have lots of money, have 2, 3 big names in front of their surname, and they are not happy. And then, with this mentality, the kind of world that we are bringing and that we are teaching our kids is a competitive world. It's a world without mercy, without compassion. We may talk about compassion. We may think it is a beautiful thing. It is, really. But we want compassion, but we don't want to let go our greed. So those two things, they don't live in the same room. It's not possible. We want justice for us, but we are unable to think about justice for everybody. We want good things, pleasant things, a good life, but we are unable to look around us and see the misery and the difficulty that other people are going through. So I think the wrong turn was when we decided that all that matters is me. When we let go the capacity to look at people, to look at animals and feel for them. Because if they are not into this small world of myself, so then, you know, we have this thing that the neighbor's kid is not my kid. I should not bother about that. But I don't know. There is no such thing as my kid. They are all human beings that will grow up and they will be part of a society, and they will all bring changes into the society that we are living, for the good or for the bad. So just to close our eyes and say it is not my business, I don't know if that's the way. And I was reading a book the other day, and I found a very interesting quotation that I would like to share about compassion. It says that compassion cannot reside in a heart that secretly believes it is better, a more evolved than others. For there is no room for pride or the self in compassion. And yet, without compassion, we know that there is no possibility for goodness. There is no possibility for a change. So this change of direction that Krishnamurti has talked about, you have been walking, going north. If somebody like me comes and says, this leads nowhere, will you change east, west, south? Will you change? I feel that we only change if we are able to listen, because I think that I say because of myself. I have been watching this video of Krishnamurti with the Buddhists for many times, and this was the first time that I really saw this, that he's talking about listening in a deep way, which means I have not been listening before. Those things just pass over to my mind. So the whole thing, and even this, the fact of listening already is a change in direction. Because if we have not been listening, and now we see we have not been listening, and we start to look, are we able to listen? How am I listening? Am I listening through my knowledge? Am I listening through likes and dislikes? So this already is a change in direction. So the change does not have to be a big thing. That is another thing, that we have this whole idea that change immediately will be a huge thing. But this already is a change if we can really start listening. And when we don't listen, know that we are not able to listen, and see why. And if we can see how important it is that we listen. Because here in this extract, Krishnamurti also says that it is this listening, real listening, profound listening, that will bring insight. That listening brings an insight immediately, and that insight changes the brain cells itself. That's what he's saying. So I feel that we have to be honest with ourselves and look at the whole thing, the way we are listening, the way we are looking at this. Are we identifying with the teachings? Are we identifying with Krishnamurti? Are we identifying with anything at all? Are we identifying with being a Christian, a Buddhist, a Hindu, or something? Are we identifying? I'm not saying it is good, it is bad, or anything, but are we identifying? That's the question. So there is another story that I saw the other day when I was watching a talk that a friend from the Theosophical Society in Brazil, he gave a talk, and almost at the end of his talk, he said a very interesting story that sums up this whole thing that we are sharing today. And I would like to finish this sharing with this story for us to think about it. He tells a story of a rabbi. His name was Susya, and he had many disciples. So when Susya, the rabbi, was about to die in his deathbed, his disciple came and asked him, "Why are you so restless?" asked the disciple to the rabbi. "I am afraid," said Susya. "Afraid of what, Rabbi?" And the rabbi says, "I'm afraid of the celestial court." And the disciple said, "You, such a kind, pious man, whose life was an example to all, if you are afraid, what about us, so imperfect and so full of sins?" To which the rabbi says, "I am not afraid of being questioned about why I am not like Moses. who left behind a legacy. I am not afraid of being asked why I am not like Moses, who left behind a legacy, because I can defend myself. I can say, I am not like Moses because I was not Moses. But I am terrified because they may ask me, Susya, why were you not Susya? So, with this small story, that maybe all we need to be is just be ourselves. And that we can answer this question in heavens when we come there, and we don't, why were you not Clemency? So with this, I would like to thank everybody for listening, and thank again Dubaiji.
Thank you, Clemis. It was a beautiful talk. You covered all the profound issues that the humankind faces, right from identification to listening to working together to compassion. I just want to mention that, right from the day a child is born, we say it's a boy or a girl. So the identification starts right from day one. Then the child is given a name depending on, what the religion of the parents is. And he gets that religion. Then he goes to school, and we are not happy if he goes to school. We want him to do better. We want him to be better than most of the students in his class. So what I'm saying is identification is a part of our life, but can we take it at the factual level and not attach value to it, like you mentioned? The moment I say that, this is better than the other, then of course any identification will bring about conflict and divisions. All that will happen. So can we take the identification as it is the fact of life? And I know I'm so and so, I'm Hindu, I'm born in India, I can't change all that. But can I leave it at that and as a fact of life and not make an importance that, Hinduism is the best culture in the world and all that kind of thing that we normally talk about. Another thing I want to add is I'm not saying how to make that change in the direction, because that would mean we are providing a method for it. But the kind of education that we have in India or elsewhere, which is basically the factory model where you take a raw material and change it the way you want it, depending on the wish of the child or the parent, so that he can fit into the society and get a good job and be happy. That is the aim. Whether he remains happy or miserable, that is, it lies in the future. I think that was one of the main reasons why Krishna started schools. Because education has that power to bring about that change in the direction. Because technologically we have progressed so much compared to what we were 100 years ago, but deep down we have remained as primitive as we were 5,000 years ago. So thank you for raising those basic issues, and they're very profound, and I'm sure you have given enough food for thought, and there'll be discussions on this. Thank you again so much for agreeing to talk to us. With these words, I'll request Dr. Gajanan Rao to unmute yourself, sir, and make some observations. Dr. Gajanan Rao. Yeah.
Not unmuted. Yes. Am I heard?
We can hear you. We can't see you, but we can hear you. Yes. We can see you now.
See me
Yes.
now?
Yes, we can see.
Well, I had some problems with this instrument. Several times the internet went off, and even when chemists were talking, it ceased for a while. But I got a general picture of what she was trying to convey. And the problem of all of us seems to be, most of us at least, that if you take a kind of assessment of yourself, I don't know if it's allowed, not like pulling the plant when it is rooting and growing and see how much it has rooted and so on. But you have a way of guessing, I suppose, intelligently, how much have you got into yourself? Whatever was said and whatever was listened to, has it sunk in? Has it taken root? Is it working by itself? A lot of questions. Well, am I transformed is a very big question. You can't dare ask it, or little things could have happened, little things here and there could have happened. A teacher takes a class and takes a subject, explains to you, you may intelligently absorb some things, you just stray away, come back and attend. You go home and attend to your mentor, your book and all that. You make something out of what was said. And on the whole, you've got something now to understand it. It is not also something like academics again, because when she mentioned compassion, true teaching, so as to reach a particular, I'm not saying a travel and all that, but to be able to be compassionate. What is he saying? As he mentioned 2, 3 things. One is enormous attention to what he has been saying, enormous attention, as he said, as she also said, listening to yourself. 1. Number 2 is, I had blocks as I was listening. I couldn't really get a whole. I got little parts and I can't put it whole again. But then that is meditation. That's meditation, to have got something, to make a sense out of it, to ponder over, and maybe a certain silence in you to ponder over. Things do happen. I'm not talking about transformation again, it's a complete change. You ponder over your own sorrow or the world's sorrow or somebody's sorrow. There's something one gets out of it. You don't do it with an ambition, with a kind of a, goal to listen and helping. But I'm just saying that I don't want to take this for a long period, because she did mention about our state, which isn't easily altering or changing in spite of having listened to him so long. That's a curse, that's a blessing we also had in teaching us. Curse because millions of years of conditioning, the language, the climate, the environment, all that we were exposed to through years and years, they all accumulated in knowledge, and that became our culture. So they all made a huge wall. But it is, I would say, if you look at it, look at all this with a certain silence of mind, it is not such a sturdy, strong wall. There's no use listening to Krishna if you're not able to make that kind of a conditioning you had through years, when you don't move a thing there, there's nothing to do about Krishna's teaching. When Amish said, change your direction, don't go north, go south. That itself would mean stopping, finding out you've got nothing about over 10 million years. Either you have not reached God, or you haven't even attended to your own problems. It's a mess. Life is a mess. The world is a mess. going on, and it's getting worse and worse. So Krishnaji said, change, drop, drain, be empty, be silent. And you are probably there given a chance of that teaching of whatever it is to come in a bit. You're not to find out if you have changed or not changed, very compassionate or not compassionate. Of course, she was not saying all that. I'm saying it's our tendency to see how much I have changed. And you may be so devastated after so many years of listening. You did something very bad to somebody or to yourself. And you think, my God, what has happened to all my learning so long? Have I not been listening? Have I not been learning? All right, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter, we're back to square one. I don't think sorrow should take over, guilt should take over and destroy what little time you have to gather and walk again. That's why at last time when there was a talk about practicality, everything is practical. If I don't do it, it's okay. My son will do it. Somebody else will do it, he will do it. Somebody else will do it. Humanity will do it. It will pick up threads where you left. So I'm not saying that hope that makes me silent and still lethargic. I keep attentive. Let me keep aware of whatever is happening. Let me throw all the damn weight out wherever is a possibility. And sharpen my senses, not the intellect. Intellect is a very sharp instrument. It can cut through, but it won't help you to get to something nicely, right? In a nice way, in a whole way, in a wholesome way. Where intellect is necessary, we have it. But that intelligence which we don't know, you may get a glimpse of it also. And one is still not too confused. Keeping away. There's a way of keeping away. We may not completely throw it into the sea, but there is somebody, as I said, listening is not possible. Somebody is boring. It's true. But even that is possible. My God, I'm not listening to him. He may be boring, but he may have something to convey. So there are times, I learned this from Krishnaji. There was somebody blabbering a question. It made a lot of fun in the audience. Audience started going, laughing, and all that. Krishnaji was still sitting and listening to that within quotes blabber. At last, Krishnaji said, will you stop laughing and making noise? We all speak in Bombay. Then he called that gentleman far away to come to his place, sit down by his side. And he told us, sir, I don't know why. He said a lot of things. You didn't listen to him 1 minute. Suddenly you felt that he's saying some nonsense. And you went on laughing, talking. I will tell you what he said. And he repeated every word of what he said. I was really astonished. And then he answered him too. So I have a feeling after listening to chemists, yes, it's a difficult problem. It's a rock we are facing. But I have a feeling everything can be done about everything, about anything. If we can't, accept it in all humility. Proceed again without. That would be my advice to myself. And I share this with my friends. Thank you, Devesh.
Thank you, sir. Very rightly put. Thanks a lot. Harshad Bhai, your turn now to make some more questions.
Are you able to hear my voice?
Yes, we can.
Okay. We don't know how life came into existence. For the first time, that simple amoeba, all those chemicals come together, and then there is the whole evolution, and the insects and the birds, animals, and finally human beings came. So that we don't know. And then when human beings arrived, then there is thinking, the mind came. And with that, the coming of the mind, I or me, I think there probably the things went wrong. Before that, I think everything was all right. Animals were fighting and of course, but human beings, when they begin to have this identification with me and you, there the division started. So animals lived on instinct and human beings are living on intellect. And this intellect has become very, very powerful. And so especially human beings have been fighting wars for thousands of years. But after industrial revolution and with the computer revolution, it has become very, very dangerous situation in the world, and nuclear war and all that possibility exists. That is because the human beings have not evolved to a higher dimension than intellect, which is called intelligence. And so with intelligence, intellect can function in a proper way, but without intelligence, intellect can be very, very destructive. So probably that has what has happened, that the intelligence has not developed in human beings. About the art of listening, Krishnaji said that freedom is at the beginning. How do we listen? And if we are thinking something, then we cannot listen. So, like when Buddha gave the first sermon to his 5 friends in Sarnath, and they all had gone through a lot of meditation and experimentation about the spiritual life. But when Buddha was giving the first sermon, only Kondana got it very quickly. And Buddha looked at Kondana and said, Kondana, you have got it. So one needs to be ready to listen and not interpret. And the thing has to go exactly as it is conveyed, because there is a lot of interpretation goes on in our mind, and that's why we really are not able to listen properly. And okay, so in which direction humanity is going, I don't think human beings can find out, because human beings were not created by human beings. And so there may be some purpose, who knows. The whole thing was created and it existed for a certain number of years, and then everything is destroyed, and then some new recreation. So these are some ideas are given in Indian traditional philosophy, but we don't know. So yes, and looking at the present situation, humanity has gone in the wrong direction because of overuse of intellect and no development of intelligence or love or compassion. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Arshad Bhai. Thanks a lot. Harish ji will make a brief observation, then we'll go to question answer session. Mr. Dinesh Bagmare will be the first one to ask question. So Harish ji, please go ahead.
Okay, namaskar. First of all, when Clemens started, and I heard the questions like, where did the humanity, where we took a wrong turn, and why haven't we changed and all that? So, my first reaction was, oh, they are rhetorical questions, But I'm glad that as the session progressed, Clemens talked from her heart, and of course, showing the clippings, those clips helped us delve into the matter. But frankly, no question arose in my mind because I found myself in complete agreement with her. Not that agreement or disagreement are important, not at all. But then I said, yes, logically, rationally, everything what she said holds good. The question arose, which again may be an intellectual thing, when Dr. Parekh said, when the intellect is not accompanied by intelligence, then intellect can make atom bomb, can bring back a totalitarian regime and all the mischief in the world. That intelligence is the thing which can make the intellect operate in a positive way, which will naturally probably bring about a better world to live in. Now, I have a question because Clemens said, and she may not have used this word, but what she may implied was the domination of head over heart. And of course, there are thinkers, speakers, they also talk about not only head and heart or head versus heart, they also talk about, the balance between head and heart. And please allow me just a brief anecdote. When beginnings of learning, Krishnaji said, in talking to students at Rakul, have you worked in garden? You must. You should dig up. And he said that when you dig up a hole in the earth, then you are immediately connected with earth. Do you know that they call Mother Earth? So digging or working in the garden is working with hand. That is why some people are very rich, and probably even if they are well-meaning and they want to work with hands, probably if there is no time or whatever. So, but a certain amount of work should be there. So hand, heart, and head. Okay. So, Dr. Parekh, my question is actually for you, not for Clemens. Does your concept of intelligence include that what in fashionable modern terminology they say EQ, emotional quotient, so to say? Let us not get hung on the word. Does it include that?
May I answer?
Yes, sir. Well,
Okay.
yeah.
What I consider intelligence is the ability to look at thinking very, very clearly as it is unfolding. Just like when anger is arising, there is some sense that awareness which can see that anger is arising. So Krishnaji calls it choiceless awareness. And that is the real key, because human beings have not come to that dimension of looking at thinking very clearly while it is happening. And so our thinking gets entangled. It's like a spider creating a webs, but the spider doesn't get entangled in its own web, but human beings are creating the webs of thinking, and it gets caught into, and it doesn't know that it has got caught into it. So sometimes I say, like a rat with a short tail going round and round trying to catch its own tail, and people are around, they are laughing, and the rat is not aware that people are around and laughing. Then somebody comes and touches the rat, and the rat moves straight and escape. So that kind of touching, when it happens in our life, whether it can happen because of some book or some person or some event, when that touching happens, when we begin to see clearly how the thoughts is creating anger, fear, jealousy, then that intelligence or choiceless awareness comes into being, and then life becomes much easier. And then we don't create problem for ourselves or minimize very much. Okay, finish.
Thank you, Arshad Bhai. Thank you. We have a question coming from Dinesh ji to Clemis. Dinesh ji, please go ahead.
Clemis, are you able to listen to me?
Yes, yes.
Do you really think or feel that simply listening can change the things and change the direction? Or we are identifying with this statement of Krishnamurti? Only listening can dilute the I or free us from all the vices? What are your views? Simply listening can change?
Yeah. So before I answer your question, I just would like to say something about this intelligence that Harshwar was talking about. See, intelligence is something that is beyond the mind. It is beyond the thought process. And intelligence is when I is not. So we think that all this creation of technology has to do with intelligence, but that is only the mechanical mind working. Intelligence sees the whole, and to see the whole, you cannot be divided in the me and the you. So intelligence will be there only when the I is not. Okay, that is one thing. And another thing, Dubaiji in the beginning says that when we are born as a girl or as a boy, and we get the name, and that identification starts. I will not agree with that. I feel when we are born as a boy, as a girl, that's a fact. There is no identification, that's a fact. But if I'm a girl and I want to be a boy and I identify with the things of the boy, that is identification. But if I am born as a girl, I'm just a girl, that's a fact, finish, end of the story. And the name, we need to have a name, but why that has to become important? If somebody calls me Clemis, Cleonice, Clarice, whatever, it is just a name. So the other things that we learn is in school, how to compete and how to be better, and we have to be better. That's a different thing. So answering your question, sorry that I went so much around to answer your question.
Yeah. Do you really think that simply listening can change the direction or change the things, or we are identifying with this Krishnamurti statement? Do you feel that this simply listening can dilute the I and free us from the vices?
See, for that, to answer this question, first we have to listen and see what happens. So the whole question is, are we able to listen the way that we really listen? If I say, I think it is possible, what good is that? Either I listen and see what happens, and it may change, it may not change. But if I want to listen only because somebody promised me, if I listen, there will be a change, there already can be no listening. Because in that listening, there is this hope for a change. So I'm already projecting something and I am waiting for that reward. So I'm not really listening. And that is also one of the reasons why sometimes we become frustrated, because we want that. We want this change. We want this, whatever Krishnamurti may have had, you know? And then we listen, but we listen because we want it. So there is no simplicity in that. And there is no real listening in that. So if I can listen, like I listen to a bird, you know, when you listen to a bird, there is complete abandonment in that. You don't think about anything. You abandon yourself in that, the song of the bird. So if you can listen like that.
Yeah, I say something.
Or to, just a second, or to anybody, if I can listen like that, you know, to anything in life, then maybe, first we have to listen like that. There is no point in me saying yes or no. Yeah, you can say.
Always
Yeah.
in listening, if you want to listen to word, then also the interest is involved, isn't it? So that it automatically becomes the motive.
Say it again.
If you listen to a bird, in that listening also, you have to have some interest. And if that interest is there, then it automatically becomes a motive.
Maybe, but you see, if you have the simplicity that you are in nature, in a park or wherever, and a bird starts singing, that is, you didn't know that the bird was going to sing or something. You never heard that bird before. I don't think there is any hope, because the song of that bird will give you nothing.
I think Dinesh, what
Thank you.
May I say something?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Or to listen to either Krishna ji or bird or to one's friend, it requires freedom at the beginning, as what Krishna ji says. So the freedom is at the beginning. Without that, it is not possible to listen very, very clearly. Of course, the person who is speaking should also be very clear when the person speaks, because if the person is confused and you are listening, still one can listen to that confusion too. But freedom to listen is very, very important, and then one can listen to anything. Okay. Thank you.
Dubey sir, you wanted to say something?
Yes, Dinesh, what I was saying is that if you have a motive in listening, then it is not listening at all. So the first point, I mean, normally when we listen to somebody, we start judging whether I know what he's talking about or I'm looking for an answer. So that is not a listening at all. So like Clemens said, there has to be many things before one can listen. I have to have compassion. I have to have patience. I have to have respect. Then only one can listen. For example, our ears, our brain is tuned to listen to certain decibel levels. Beyond that, it becomes unpleasant, whether I like it or not. It's a part of our being, it's instinct. Similarly, the notes, if they become too loud, it becomes unpleasant. When I listen to something which is not very pleasant, is it possible to do that? For that, the mind has to be quiet. That is very important. There has to be space in the mind. Another thing which I want to mention to Clemens is when I said about identification, I also mentioned that can we take it as a fact? So it's not that just by being a boy or a girl or having a religion is going to create conflict. But when I identify, which means when I give importance to it, then only the conflict comes. So I just wanted to clarify. I think we have many people coming up.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you.
Durgaji wants to make a comment, and then Mr. Rama Rao. So Durgaji, please go ahead. Unmute yourself.
Hello. Good morning, Clemens. Yeah, it's very great listening to you. But I only wish that, you smile a bit more, during your long, talk. And you smile only in the last. Yeah, you raised very valuable questions. And it's very wonderful listening to everybody. Like, everybody is contributing very valuable points. Either, Mr. Gajanan Raoji or Harshad Parekh. And, I think that makes time more valuable, valuable facts and, and I think Mr. Wagmare asked a very reliable question, unless one is not interested, one doesn't listen at all. I think, from there, I think we need to start. Is really one connected with the teaching? Does really see whatever the K is pointing to? Or that connection is made? Is one really wanting to see it? Really wanting to go into it? I feel that's a whole lot of work also one needs to do. That's my understanding only. It may be, my viewpoint. And one more thing I would like to add is, the discerning of eye process. He says, I think there are there are no judges and nobody is there to judge you. Nobody is there to give a certificate to you. Okay, here is you are, here is you are not there. No, it's not about that. It is about oneself. Does one really feel that? Does one have that passion and intensity to see where he is pointing to? Or is he making an image of everything? Image of listening to Krishnamurti so much and you make an image of everything, Our mind, that has so much of capacity to play tricks on ourselves. There's also very, many instances we come across. He says there are traps everywhere. And the question one needs to ask is oneself, that identity, that one who is thinking that one who has known, one who is thinking that he has understood everything, that questions one need to ask every moment. Am I really there or am I making an image of myself? I think that's the only way. I'm questioning, inquiring. There's a wonderful tool he had given, unless and until we inquire, we put our heart, and you raised a very valuable point. It's more of intellectual thinking, nobody puts the heart. And Mr. Hareshwar Singh, he has put in even a better idea, hands, unless one is completely involved with it. Your hand, your heart, your mind, all that is part of it. Unless one doesn't have that much intensity, that much of passion to really go into what he's saying. Of course, there are journeys and we all understand quite a bit. We all do agree with, whatever he's saying. But unless and until one keeps questioning oneself, one's own motives, one's own intentions, does he want to be somebody? That question everybody needs to ask, keep asking oneself. And whatever the presentation is it any value to it? The presentation, the points one she or he is saying, does it add any value to somebody? Or something like that, that is my understanding of Krishnaji's teaching. And if there is any identity to understand is oneself, he says, read the book of your own life. And there are no, shortcuts, and there are no, halfway throughs, go to the end. That will be there only when one is thoroughly and clearly, very passionately into it. That happens automatically, I feel. And that's all I would like to say. It's wonderful listening to you, and the extract you brought of Krishnajis are very intense. Very good to see all that. It's good listening to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Durga. Thank you. We have Mr. Rama Rao who wants to ask a question, and then Hansaji. So, Mr. Rama Rao, please go ahead.
Sir, my question is, Mr. Clemson, madam, can you clarify what do you mean by direction of change?
You mean change in direction, right?
Oh.
Yeah. See, change, what I mean with this change in direction is this, we have been in a certain way, right? Psychologically speaking, we have been following people, we have been reading and thinking because I read something in a book, I know it. We have been followers, and can we change that? Can we let go of this and be completely different from that? Stop following and start looking for oneself. Stop looking through the world and through life through other people's eyes and look through our own eyes. What we may see in the beginning may be very curved and not very precise, but as we exercise our eyes, we start to see clearly. But for that, we have to start looking and stop following. So what I mean by change of direction is something like this. We have been doing things in a certain way for long time. Stop that and change the direction and drop it completely. That's what I mean. Is it clear?
Thank you.
Good morning, all, and good morning, Clemences. Ma'am, I just want to ask you. May I listen? Can I listen you?
Yeah, I can listen to you.
I just want to ask you, how can I introduce love and compassion in myself?
See, nobody is able to do that. I cannot do that to myself. Love and compassion is something that has to come. Nobody can invite it.
How can
But we
we
can see, but there is a way that we can see that we are not being loving, that we are not being compassionate. And that already is a change, because we have never been looking so specifically to it. So the moment I become aware, because we have many ideas that I am loving, I am a compassionate person because I give some alms to somebody who knocks at the door and looking for some mendicant or something. So I'm a loving person, I'm a compassionate person. And with this kind of idea about myself, I don't look at the reality, the day-to-day life, what's really going on, the way I relate with people, the way I believe things to be. If I think that some people are better than others, if I think that the bad things are happening to people because it's their karma. So I can see that in me. That already is a change. And if I'm aware of those things, maybe love and compassion starts to find its way.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Clemens. I want to add to what Clemens said. Ansari, I think all of us have innately in us compassion and love, hate, anger. They are all part of us. We have abundance of it. Only problem is that sometimes the self becomes so important that love and compassion falls off. So why do you want to have love and compassion? Just be what you are and see what is coming up. If you are not compassionate, just see that. If you can see what it is, maybe there is some possibility of a change. Don't worry about what you have or what you don't have. Be aware of what you have. And if you get aware completely, there'll be a change. I can assure you that. We will take the last question now, Mr. Dakshinamurthy. Please, sir, go ahead. Ask Clemens.
Yeah. Good afternoon. Am I audible, sir?
Yes, you are.
Yeah. Clemens, thanks for the nice talk. But I would like to present a little contrary view, and I welcome participants to give their comments. My thinking is change in direction is not a change at all if it is in the field of knowledge. We always change from A to B in the field of knowledge. Like suppose I am a Hindu and I am fed up with the Hindu religion and the rituals, etc. and all. I become a Christian. That is not a change at all. Likewise, if I go to Guru X, I stay with you for 10 years and I am not happy with what I am learning from the Guru, I go to Guru Y. Again, that is not a change at all. So, change in direction. Again, you have to keep in mind what is direction. Direction means movement. From A to B, there is a movement. Movement means it is a motive. Motive means self is involved. So if I am fed up with X religion and if I go to Y religion, is involved. When the self is involved, there is no change at all because it is still in the field of knowledge. I would like to have comments from all the participants, including Clemens, on this.
So I did not understand. Is there a question or no? There is no question.
My question is a change in direction, as long as it is in the field of knowledge, is not a change at all. That's number one. Number two, I heard Krishnaji's talk and also your comments and all that. When I am going in the direction of north and somebody comes and tells me that is not the right way, that will lead you to your destination, it will not lead you to your house, you go to south or something like that, right? So before I turn south, first of all I have to stop. That means the movement has to stop. That is the movement of direction going from A to B has to stop, which means what? Time has to stop and thought has to stop. That is a state of nothingness. That is what Kay is also talking about. Nothingness means not a thing. A thing means what is created by thought, right? in Christianity, they say things become the thought becomes things. You think about something and you create that something, right? So what K is telling is, in a state of nothingness, anything created by thought should not be there. That is emptiness, that is silence, that is change. Not going from A to B is a different direction and all that. And it is definitely in the field of knowledge. And so it is not a change at all.
I think Clemens would say about the psychological field, not the field of knowledge. But yes, Clemens.
Yeah. Sir, psychological field also, say I'm a Hindu religious man. I change my direction. I'm no longer a Hindu. I become a Christian. And then I'm not happy with that. Then I became a Buddhist. But is it a change?
No, that's not a change which she talked about. Clemens, you want to clarify this?
Yeah, so I have not mentioned this kind of change at all, and I don't know where he got this idea from. But the thing is, I will just pick up something that he said, that I will just make a comment. You know, there are this whole idea that people think if you think something, it will happen. You see, there is nothing new about this, because that's what we have been doing all the time. We have been thinking many things, and many things have been happening. So this so-called power of thought that people used to use, now it has become quite a fashion, at least in the West, that people say you imagine something nice and your life will become nice and all that. You see, we have been doing that and nothing has happened. So the real change will be stop all this. Thinking life should be like this, should be like that. Just let life shine through, you know. Stop trying to give it a direction.
Thank you, Clemens. I think we'll have the last comments from Shakti ji. Please go ahead, Shakti ji.
Dakshinamurti ji, you see, I am not, my voice is coming, sir?
Yes, you are.
Yeah, I am not contradicting what you said, but I just want to share that, you know, there is a book, Truth and Actuality, and in it, at one place, Krishnamurti says that, you know, you are going on some road or somewhere, some paths, and you don't see the flowers there, the birds there. You are just lost in your thoughts. So you say to yourself that, well, next time I will see the bird, I will see the flower. So it's not changing the direction, doesn't imply, you see, only the dissolution of I or complete silence within. That is of course, that is part of Krishnaji's discourse. But there is a change of direction. If I am escaping all the time, I am not even aware of my escape. So that is also a change of direction. Just that I wanted to comment. It's a vast, you know, discourse. Thank you.
Thank you, Shakti ji. Thanks a lot. I think with this we come to the end of our program today. I want to thank Clemens for accepting our offer and speaking to all of us. Thank you, Clemens, once again. And next week we'll have Michael Mendiza from Ohio, and the lecture will start at 9:30 a.m. because he is in US and we have to adjust to his timings. Jansab, we can close now.
Definitely, no problem. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Kamleshji, please close it.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody. Thanks a lot. Thanks, Kamleshji. Thanks for everything.